on the Women in Leadership team here at LHH, and I'm also a Women in Leadership facilitator. I'm joined today by Mary Gregory, who is a Women in Leadership facilitator and executive coach and author, and also by Sinead Laverty, who's the ERG Gender Forum lead for the ADECA group and a client director here at LHH. So just to say that we are offering 6 taster sessions today to share what our Elevating Women in Leadership programme is all about. And we'll give you as much personal development as we can within the next 50 minutes or so. So today's session is on strengthening confidence and resilience. And just to mention that we've popped a worksheet in the post in the chat actually there for you. And we're not sharing the slides on today's session, but all of the key points that we cover on the session today are in that worksheet. And if you're joining us today for your own personal development, we'd recommend that you find a buddy to share what comes up for you today in the session, or even better, get a group of people together to discuss what was talked about throughout these sessions and start a development group of your own. If you are thinking about running a development program, one of the things that we've learned from our development programs is that women benefit hugely from learning together in support groups. And there's something really unique about a program that's developed for women by women. And lastly, our webinar format today, we have a webinar format. So we don't have all of the virtual tools available to us that we would on a regular program, such as breakout rooms and whiteboards, but we will try and make this session as interactive as we can using the chat and polls functions. So at this stage in the program, you would have completed a career activism one-day workshop, and just before the next session, the strengthening confidence and resilience session, we would have a discovery session. And a discovery session is where it's in a small group. We've got 8 or 10 people in these groups. They last for about 2 hours, sessions around 2 hours. Firstly, these sessions are to share successes and progress from the last session. So I know it's only been a week, but if you have any successes from joining us on the last session, or if there's any actions that you took following the session, please feel free to share them in the chat. We would love to hear about them. And secondly, the discovery sessions are about personal challenges and topics that people may want to bring to the group to get support. And we use a number of different coaching tools and techniques to move people forward and find solutions to their challenges in these sessions. So today's taster, as we said, is focusing on confidence and resilience. And I'm going to pass you over now to Mary, who is going to take us through the first part of this. So over to you, Mary.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and hello everybody. It's an absolute delight to be here today, and I'm a very fortunate person because I get to facilitate the programs that we work for women, elevating women leaders. And I get to meet some wonderful women leaders who are doing fantastic things in organisations. So if any of you are inclined to come and join us on one of our programmes, we'd be absolutely delighted to work with you. Anyway, here is a kickoff in around our module on strengthening confidence and resilience. And I just want to sort of give an overview of what this module is all about. Well, really, we take a very strengths-based approach to supporting our participants on this programme, and with confidence and resilience, that really links very nicely in to helping you feel better in yourself and more confident about the skills and strengths that you possess. We also spend a lot of time looking at your resilient energy, and I don't know about you, but for me today, anyone who's working in today's modern world, you have got resilient energy, because the modern workplace is all about ongoing change. It's always happening all the time and is very challenging and stretching to work in. So you have got to have some resilient energy to be able to work in a modern organisation these days. So we spend some time during the programme, during this workshop, looking at what your resilient strengths are and what qualities, what stories you can tell for yourself that help you feel confident and help you feel resilient. We also spend time on this module looking at your mindset and beliefs, and that is all about really helping you understand what are the beliefs and mindsets that you hold that really empower and help you, but but also what can we do about those niggly thoughts and beliefs that we might catch ourselves saying to ourselves that we can try and turn around and reframe for ourselves. So we'll share more about the details of this as I go through the content of the whole of this workshop. So let me just move you into the slides and how they present as we go through the workshop. So I'm kind of giving you an overview of how we cover this topic. So when we first get back together, this is a welcome back moment for the group. So we will encourage people to come into the sessions. All our sessions are very participative. We like to get people involved. We believe very much that you learn the most when you're actually immersed in the process and you're thinking things through for yourself, you're engaging in discussion. So we keep the workshops very participative, and straight away we'll be encouraging you to check in, to share what you've learned from the previous module, what you might have put into practice as a way of welcoming you back into the room. And then we move on to a warm-up, an icebreaker, if you like, where we look at energy. The session is all about confidence, resilience, and energy. So we look at energy and invite people to say where they feel they're at in terms of the battery. And this is an exercise you could take away from today because it's really useful to think about, where's my energy battery right now? Because sometimes we go through the day, we don't even think about it. But you can decide for yourself, am I down at a 1? Am I really exhausted and tired? Or am I fully charged up there at number 5 or somewhere in between? And this is something useful to check in with yourself about as you go through your day, so that you can then think, well, what can I do to top my energy up in this particular moment? And Sarah's going to be explaining a bit more about some of the things we can look at with regards to topping up. But take that away as something for you to take away. But this is also something that we use as an introductory exercise into this workshop to get people thinking about their energy. We then also consider why resilience and why confidence. And we're looking at the research that LHH has done. And what we've noticed is that men have much less issue around confidence and resilience than women tend to do. So women tend to doubt their own potential much more, are very much more aware of their imposter. It doesn't mean that men don't have an imposter. I've certainly worked with male leaders who have an imposter, but women often tend to be much more aware of their imposter, and as a more minority grouping in any particular situation, have got less support to help them overcome their imposter as well. There's also a legacy from sort of back in the 1970s and 80s where we're all meant to be superwomen, and there's kind of that whole thing about striving to be superwomen and trying to be everything to everybody, which isn't necessarily helpful. And also, I don't know about you, I know this is something I can do. I can overanalyze for England at times. Women tend to sometimes hold on to negative thoughts and kind of ruminate about these negative thoughts long before the situation has passed, whereas that's something that men just don't seem to do. So that's one of the reasons we focused on thinking about this module for women, is to help women really find power in themselves and confidence in themselves to actually think that anything is possible for themselves. And we start off the session looking at what confidence is, and we talk about confidence being a belief in oneself and one's power and abilities, to be self-reliant, self-assured. Your self-belief remains intact whatever the outcome of your best effort. And again, our research has shown that women who are really successful and step up to very senior leadership positions do have a real strong sense of self-belief and that anything is possible. And then resilience, our take on resilience is really all about looking at flexibility and being in charge and determined to address life's challenges and come from a place that challenges are something that make me stronger and wiser and more capable, rather than something that's going to keep knocking me back. And that we all grow through that experience of being challenged and being stretched and outside of our comfort zone. So that's kind of the attitude that we take with both confidence and resilience. And where we start out is we start with looking at your strengths. And we feel there's a real connection between feeling confident, being resilient, and also understanding your strengths. So I'm going to invite people to just post in the chat your answers to how do you think knowing your strengths helps us lead to greater confidence. So just think about that, pop your answers in the chat, and I'm going to continue on and explain a bit more about why we approach strengths in the way we do and why we include them in this area about confidence. And then we'll come back and have a look at your answers in the chat. So just pop your answers in the chat now, and I'll just continue on. So how we start looking at this is we look at the world of sport. So if we look at, there are lots and lots of really successful women sportsmen. And if you, and some of you may play sport and be keen on sport, who are on the call today, but one thing we know that sports people do really, really well is focus on their strengths. So they know that if they focus at the things they're really, really good at and get to world-class level in that area, then they're far likely to be a winner than if there's somebody who just looks at, oh, well, where are my non-strengths? I better start brushing up on those non-strengths, because that's not going to help them excel in their particular field. So we borrow from the world of sport the whole thinking about strengths is something that really supports us to be our best. Focus on those strengths and we can really excel. We can also feel much better in ourselves and much more energized. That's also going to help us, rather than looking at the things that are our non-strengths. So I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat, because there's lots and lots of comments coming through. There's probably far more comments coming through than I can reference right now. So we've got loads, but I'm just sending them back here. So yes, understanding our strengths brings self-awareness, which is so important to leadership and being a leader. Leveraging your best and managing your weaknesses, for sure. We can't be all things all the time. It's about creating a team around us, knowing what our strengths are, knowing what people's strengths are in the team, and knowing that we can use the strength of the team for any area that we might not feel so strong in. It's very good for positive reinforcement, for sure. So building our strengths, building our confidence, focuses on what we're good at, and it gives us more energy. Absolutely. When we're playing to our strengths, we are absolutely more energized. So there's a really good, strong link there. We know where to focus our time and what to put our time to. Very good. And knowing your strengths allows you to share them with others, giving you more confidence. Very, very good. Yeah. So you think about applying for a new role, maybe internally in the organization. You know what your strengths are and what you can contribute in that new role from knowing them. And we get a greater understanding. We will all bring something different and can emulate another person. Very, very good. There are so many comments here. So I really just want to say thank you to everybody. I'm just going to say any others. Shaping, positioning myself in the business team. Yeah, knowing how best you can contribute. I haven't got time, unfortunately, to go through all of these comments, but they are absolutely wonderful. So thank you for sharing those. There's some really good thinking coming through there. So let's have a look at what we've put together in terms of thinking about your strengths. We consider a strength as that underlying quality that does energize you. So it's great that that was highlighted in the chat there, that it's when we play to our strengths, it energizes us and it contributes to our own growth and leads to our peak performance. So it's all about when the going gets good, the good get going, we really excel. And when we're under pressure, it can be very confidence boosting to rely on our strengths and help us be resilient. And also in our relationships and how we present ourselves and how we build our brand, which was something we cover in a later workshop. It helps us be authentic and really know how to position ourselves in terms of the value we bring to the organization. So lots and lots of reasons there to be focusing on our strengths. And what we're considering also here is thinking about your peak performance, thinking about the times when you are in flow, because I would imagine that you're in flow when you are playing to your strengths and you're doing something that you're really good at. So, for example, I'll give my own example. I feel I'm at my peak when I'm talking to people, when I'm coaching somebody, because that, you know, my communication, relationship building skills all come around from my strengths. If I have a spreadsheet to do, nah, that's not really my strength, but I can do it. It doesn't mean I can't do it. I just know it takes more energy than me sitting talking to somebody or running a session like this. This is where I'm in my natural flow. So it's really worth thinking about, where are you in your natural flow? And, you know, think about, you know, on the worksheet, complete the worksheet. There are examples on there as well, but write in your own examples as well to remind yourself of where you're in flow and where you think your natural strengths might be. Now, as part of the workshop of this particular session, we invite people to complete a strength scope survey. And that is a recognized psychometric tool. It's a really simple tool to complete and very, very easy to understand as well. And it highlights what your strengths are. So here we've got kind of the circular model here that is kind of at the center of your report, and you get your report back from StrengthScope, and it demonstrates that you can see here there are 24 recognized strengths that you're being measured against when you complete the psychometric. And those tall blue arrows, the tall purple arrows, get my colors right today, they indicate your standout strengths. So if we look at this person's example here, they've got standout strengths of optimism, self-confidence, collaboration, empathy, leading. I can't perusal Vanessa. I couldn't read that from where I was sitting, and decisiveness. So those are the 7 standout strengths that this person has. So you could almost build a picture and imagine what this person would be like, just from having a look at what their standout strengths are. But we also focus not just on those, but we also look at the bubbling under strengths as well, which are some of the taller blue arrows. So for example, here, creativity is quite high for this person. Initiative is also quite high. So they've got quite a rounded view here of what their strengths are. And what we encourage you to do in the session is to explore your strengths and reflect on your report with other people in the group. So you would have a chance in groups to look at your StrengthScope report and reflect on what are you learning about yourself? What are you learning about what your strengths are? So that's looking at your strengths overall. But in the chat, somebody mentioned weaknesses. And we don't neglect weaknesses, but we don't call them weaknesses, because what we find is, rather than a weakness, what we have is we have strengths that go into overdrive. So if you imagine something that you're really, really good at, so one of mine, for example, is enthusiasm. It's a fantastic strength because it gives energy, it helps people feel inspired, all those sorts of things that are good about it. But in overdrive, it can come across as really pushy. So I've got to monitor that for myself, that I don't come across as really pushy with people, that I keep my enthusiasm in check and I keep it fairly balanced. So it's supportive and it's helpful. It's not going into that overdrive phase. So one of the things that we do in the program is think about how can you dial up or dial down your strengths dependent on the situation and dependent on what's needed. And again, we invite you to have that discussion in pairs and think about that, but also we offer some ideas for how you can actually manage your strengths that they do go into overdrive. So for example, observing, discovering, thinking before acting, becoming aware of your triggers, keeping a trigger diary, for example, all sorts of different ways that you can manage your strengths. And then on the back of that, we also offer resources. So StrengthScope has a really great strengths portal. So we encourage you to go and look at their portal. Again, there's lots of activities and things that you can do there that will help you with increasing your understanding and management of yourself in relation to your strengths. So that takes up the first half of the morning, and that'd be followed by a break. And then after the break, we would come into starting to look at your energy and the different roles that you play. So I'm going to now hand back to Sarah, who is going to take us through the next part of the session, rather.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. So strengths energize us. So now we're going to move on to thinking about how we are using that energy. And many of us probably feel that we are juggling multiple roles, just spinning plates all the time. And we may be we may be actually spreading ourselves a little bit too thin and not balancing out our energy as we may need to. So let's explore some life stages. So just a little warning here, I'm going to be referring to age, so prepare yourselves. I'm using this model by Donald Super, and just to get us thinking about life stages and roles, sometimes called the life career rainbow. So up the center, we have a list of possible life roles, just to help us thinking about different roles we have at different times in our lives. And the different roles that Donald Super says that we have are, first of all, child. And child is the time and energy we spend being a child, but also it can be caring for parents as well. Student. So student is the amount of time and energy we spend studying. And this will be a lot during our younger years, but can also be throughout our lifetime. Leisurite is the amount of time and energy we spend on leisure activities. Citizen is the amount of time and energy we spend on non-paid and volunteer work. Worker is the amount of time we spend on paid work. Parent is the amount of time and energy we spend caring for children. Partner is the amount of time and energy we spend on a relationship. And homemaker is the time and energy we spend on doing cooking and DIY activities, administration, etc. And sorry, just to go back there, the spots, the different coloured spots there is representing the amount of time and energy we're spending on all of those different roles in our lives. So thinking about our life stages helps us to reflect on whether we have the balance of energy right for us and our circumstances. So if we think about our career alongside our life stages, well, where are we at? And Super suggests that there's 4 different areas where we can be in our career. And the first one is exploration, which is exploring careers, thinking about what career we want to go into. The second one is establishment, where we're building our career and developing breadth. And the third one is maintenance, which is keeping up to date in terms of our role and our job, but also developing breadth. And disengagement, which is moving away from paid work and just stepping out of paid work. And so hopefully this has got you thinking and started to think about how balanced are your roles currently and what would be your ideal. Some people find it helpful to draw a circle. Some people find it helpful to draw a pie chart rather than a circle. And one of the things that we often hear from women who are in caring and have caring responsibilities outside of work is that when they stop caring, they don't have as many caring responsibilities, they tend to, sometimes have powered down up to this point in terms of their careers. And they can sometimes forget to power back up because they're used to spreading their energy so thinly around and looking after everybody else. So they're thinking of others and forget to focus on themselves again. So we are looking at where we want to spend our time and energy, and then what options and choices we have to achieve our desired balance. And have a time review. Are the time stealers that have crept into your life and ways to rethink what you do? And just to give you a small example is that at this point in my life, I have 2 children and one of them has moved on to secondary school, on to senior school. So sometimes at the start of the year, my son wanted lifts to school, but what I had to do was, because he was so used to it from primary, but what I had to do was I had to really set a boundary and say, well, we can get a lift if there's heavy rain or if it's very dark, but otherwise you need to take the bus to school yourself. And what that did for me was that actually gave me 10-15 minutes back in the morning where I was actually able to go for a walk before work. And that helped me to rebalance my energy. And it gave me more energy throughout the day. And it made me feel better. And it gave me a little bit of time to focus on myself. So consider what boundaries you need to manage to achieve what you want. And if you could pop them in the chat, any boundaries you feel you need to manage, it would be lovely to see some. And then the final part is, how do we look after ourselves and keep our energy high? And as part of the pre-work on our programme, participants complete an energy assessment, which looks after 4 areas. So what type of energy do you need to strengthen? And I'll talk about these through as well. So think about it for yourself. And we'll run a little poll. So if Mida is in the background, if you could run the little poll there, and I'll just explain what each of them are. So the first one is spiritual energy. And that's really about working on what you do best, fulfilling your values at work and feeling a sense of purpose. And physical energy, which is looking after your body, sleep, exercise, food, etc. Emotional energy is emotional awareness, attention to how you're feeling, letting go of negative thoughts, getting balance. And mental energy is being focused and staying positive, and mindfulness and being present to now. So looking at the poll here, at this point in time, the 2 highest ones are, mental energy, which is being focused, staying positive, mindfulness, being present in the now, and physical energy as well, which is looking after your body, sleep, exercise, food. They're the top two here. After that is emotional energy and spiritual energy. So that's where this group is at today. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. So in the real session, this brings us up to lunch. So the activity before lunch is a walk and talk with our buddies, just to talk about the areas you need to strengthen away from screens. And this activity is on the worksheet for you to do as well after the session today. We have an hour for lunch with networking for those who want it. And then following lunch, we aim to have speakers. We have a speaker, and we do aim to have speakers on each of our workshops, because women do like to learn through hearing stories and experiences from other women. So usually this would be here for about, our speaker would be here for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have a break and we stretch our legs. And Sinead is a regular guest speaker here on our sessions. So Sinead, I'm going to ask, what do participants find most useful from these guest speaker sessions?
Thank you, Sarah. And I guess just the context to which you gave it, introduced me there, was perfect, because actually it's the storytelling, right? Because guest speakers, when they join, very much like myself, are bringing lived experience. They're bringing that connection, I guess, for participants, that it's a story told with real feeling. And I think when we hear stories and we can kind of just thread through things that say, well, actually, that really makes sense to me, it kind of has a different connection and a different sense of, maybe I can do something with that. Maybe I can take that forward. That feels a lot more actionable. And I certainly think that for myself, one of the things that I always try and balance, and we all have this, is the ability to hold vulnerability and strength in the context of that time. And I think that can be quite inspiring in itself for participants. And a lot of that comes from the ability to kind of reflect back. So I know that Sarah, Mary, when we do these sessions, we invite our guest speakers to really share a career history, a bit of a career story, and then thread through kind of that career story with the particular module goals. So if we're leaning into the kind of confidence, resilience, it's really sort of reflecting on your career history, but with that really as a key thread. And that's really where you're just bringing through some, for myself, for example, when I think about that, I'm given that as a bit of a scope. I'm looking back to my career history, and it's very important to reflect ourselves on, actually, what did it feel like at those key times? Because sometimes the big headline events aren't always the stories that you're kind of threading through as sustainable learnings. And I think particularly for me, this space has been quite interesting, because I've had some quite big career and life events that I've really had to adapt to. And by that, I mean things like redundancy. So that's a really significant career event that obviously is going to pull through on various sort of behaviours around what we're talking about in this session. But also things like maternity leaves and coming back from maternity leaves and divorce. And these things that you don't plan for in life that do impact how we can turn up to work and how we recover. So these are kind of big headline events. And I will always share with as much openness as possible the fact that, they do impact, particularly as women, they do impact our self-confidence when we experience life events. So I might turn up most days feeling pretty resilient, pretty confident, and then something you don't see coming round the corner hits at you, and it might be in your personal life, and it impacts your resilience at work as well. And actually, there's a school of thought from Adam Grant and Sheryl Sandberg in particular that talks about secondary loss, and it impacts women more than men in that it's your self-confidence. So let me just explain. If you experience a loss or a hardship in one domain of your life, it impacts the other domain. So if it's in your personal life, it will impact your workplace, and it shows up as a dip in self-confidence. And it's quite an interesting kind of story to tell as a guest speaker, because it shows that you are going to go through ebbs and flows with this. And some of those are big headline events that we recover from. But actually, some of my most kind of impactful learning is also sharing that it's the day-to-day habit that we can fall into. So, I shared there was a divorce scenario. And out of that, I adopted this busy single mum identity. And not necessarily intentional. I kind of fell into it. And I find myself, particularly post-COVID in our lovely kind of virtual worlds, entering these meetings that were running back to back with this lovely social tone of, hi, how are we all? I'm really busy. I'm so busy. And I was just bringing this frantic me to the fore, because it was this identity I hadn't even realized I'd fully adopted. But it was definitely that striving to be superwoman thread that Mary acknowledged. But what was happening was that actually it was kind of like a perpetuating of like this self-talk. So I was calling myself busy. I was saying I'm juggling, I'm multitasking. And then I was probably doing it more and more because I was saying it. And the sad reality of it is that actually isn't good for my energy and the type of way that I guess my strengths. So again, to what Mary was just saying about play to your strengths with energy, I'm not good with grunt work. I'm not good being in that hamster wheel. And actually, I don't want to be perceived. So from a brand perspective, or how I want to show up at work, I'd like someone to call me creative or elevated in her strategic thinking. That's how I want to be described. And that's actually where my energy is definitely best placed. So I was somebody that had fallen into that cycle. And when guest speaking, I think it's really nice to have women like myself turn up and say, yep, I did that, guilty. And I still need to work at it because I'm guilty of falling back into it as well. So just because we work at these things or become more conscious of it, doesn't mean we don't intentionally need to keep carrying that learning forward. So I would always, share some of the tactics I adopted, and they've been mine. But what's great about bringing guest speakers in is to hear back from participants and typically those questions are the how. So really drilling down on the how. And I love that because that's obviously about inspiring something really actionable and tangible out as an output from it. So yeah, I believe it's a really impactful place within the programs. So Sarah, Mary, did you have any more questions you want to drill down on there?
That was wonderful, Sinead. Thank you so much for that. I just wanted to mention a few of the boundaries that people on the call are struggling with right now. Before I pass it over to Mary to talk about mindsets and beliefs, because I'm sure a lot of us resonate with these. Working hours in remote global role, shortening bedtime routine, time management and knowing when to say no. Sinead, this is probably one that you've struggled with in the past. Making time for myself. Saying no is coming up quite a bit, actually, not trying to do everything all at once. Sinead, you mentioned that too, about trying to be superwoman. Working long hours, taking more time for own needs. And homemaker, as I basically do all of that, my partner doesn't contribute as much. So yeah, setting boundaries is definitely a big thing to try and help us manage our energy and to do our best work as well when we are in work too. So I'm going to pass you over to Mary, who's going to talk to us about mindsets and beliefs.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Sinead. Always a joy to work with Sinead when she comes on as our guest speaker, always inspiring our groups. I also like to add on the boundary front, we're linking this to mindset and beliefs, that actually how you view yourself and how you value yourself will make a difference to whether you say no to things or whether you say yes too quickly. And we usually share a quote in our workshops around, in saying yes, what are you saying no to? So when we say yes, what are we saying no to? And that is often around the thing that we say no to is ourselves and our well-being and looking after ourselves. So it's so important that we do have those boundaries to take care of ourselves. And also remember, boundaries work for everybody. It's not just you're not doing it just for yourself. You're doing it so you can be at your best, so you can contribute the optimum to your organization. And probably what I've just demonstrated there is a bit of reframing, which we're going to look at right now, because what we do on the second part of this session on confidence as resilience, as we start to move into thinking about our mindset and beliefs, and the quality of the conversation that is going on in our head really, really makes a difference. So we look at some of the things on this session, some of the things that stop us from being successful, some of the things we'll say that are limiting, but also the things that we can say to ourselves that can be empowering. And again, the reason we focus on this is because from our research, we found that women who are really successful have a really strong self-belief and a sense of there are no barriers. They can always overcome whatever barriers might be presented to them, because they've got this really strong core self-belief. So being able to understand yourself and what your drivers are, what your beliefs and mindset is a really helpful way to help keep building your confidence and keep being able to move yourself through whatever challenges you may present. And one of the first things we look at is exploring a different set of mindset and beliefs that any of us can hold at any given time. So I'm just going to introduce you to these. So one is that very famous and talked about imposter syndrome, which is, I've been getting away with this too long. One day they're going to find out I'm really not very good at this, etc., etc. However that might show up, but our imposter syndrome. Another one is, I'm not good enough, so there's just no point in me trying. So just constantly putting yourself down. That's a bit of one of mine that I've had to learn to navigate over the years. Perfectionism. If I don't do things perfectly, then I failed. So that sense of no matter how well you might do something, you never give yourself any credit. And it almost can also impact how you lead, because you're worried about delegating to other people, because if you don't do it perfectly, they're not going to do it perfectly either. So that's another mindset or belief that can hold us back. Excessively worrying. So that sense of, well, what if this happens, or what if that happens? Always being conscious that, you know, it's all going to go horribly wrong, and just worrying excessively about things that causes you extra stress that isn't necessarily necessary. And then not necessarily feeling okay with uncertainty. So I need to know exactly what's happening, when it's happening. And if I don't know, it's all going to go horribly wrong and backfire on me. So that real intolerance of uncertainty and not feeling able to trust the process or honor the fact that things are sometimes emergent and we can't always have everything certain. And then finally, I can't possibly ask for help. You might have grown up, but this often, the origins of this also, it's often the messages we've had growing up in our families. But we can have that, origin, that message of, oh, no, to be a really an amazing person, you can't possibly ask for help, which means we grow up and we find it hard to show weakness and to be vulnerable. So those are six different mindsets that you might catch yourself falling into or using. What we're curious about now is which one resonates the most strongly with you. So if you'd like to put up the next poll, Mida, that's great. So the mindset and beliefs, choose the one that resonates most strongly with you. And we'll just see what different ones come through on today's call and in today's group. And it really is quite amazing how our mindset and our beliefs can shape the way we look. You imagine going into a meeting and thinking, I've got nothing to contribute here. If you're saying that to yourself, you're not going to find anything to contribute. If you go in with the belief, actually, I've got just as much to contribute as the next person, you may find yourself then finding that you have got something to say in that meeting. What we can see here is that, perfectionism and imposter are coming up pretty close. Perfectionism just about 25% versus 23% of imposter. But everyone has been mentioned. So some people on the call have put themselves down. Others are afraid of showing weakness. That's kind of always having to be strong. Others, excessive worry. And then a small proportion of us on the call today, intolerance of uncertainty. So quite interesting to see that's the shape of things on this group today. But each of us will have our own selection of these different mindsets that we adopt, and in different contexts as well. And what we do in the session is we don't just leave it by exploring and helping you understand. We start to offer you a framework for helping you to manage these limiting beliefs. So for example, here we've got examples of something you might say to yourself for imposter, putting yourself down, perfectionism, excessive worry. These are examples of that. We then invite you to think about, well, how can you reframe that limiting mindset or that limiting belief. And when we talk about reframe, it's a bit like, you've probably heard that saying, when life hands you a lemon, make lemonade. It's about, how can I turn it around so that I can make sure I'm giving myself positive messages instead? So for example, I may not know all the answers, but I know enough to find out. That's the reframing of your imposter, of you finding your imposter voice getting a bit noisy. Or if you're putting yourself down, reminding yourself of the strengths that you have and that you have much to offer. Excessive worry, if it all goes wrong, I can deal with that and learn from it. So making it a learning situation rather than all having to be perfect and right at the beginning. And then here's perfectionism. Making a mistake is part of how I learn and grow. Absolutely. And there's a great saying we also use on the program, which is, the more you seek perfectionism, the more it eludes you. It's actually it's not possible to get everything completely perfect all the time. So just go for good enough and go for it as a learning experience for yourself. So that's one way that we introduce to help people reframe their limiting beliefs. And then you have a chance to actually move into having a conversation with a partner to look at an unhelpful or limiting belief that you may be holding, so that you can actually start to reframe it and start to embed some really positive beliefs and mindsets for yourself. Then we move on to buddy conversations. Now, we've mentioned buddies a few times, and we've suggested, if you're here individually, that you pair up with someone and find a buddy. I'm just going to give us a bit of background as to why we have buddies. So we find that having someone that you can link with and connect with on a more intimate basis, so you're going to talk to this person, we encourage you to not only speak during the actual sessions themselves, but to stay in touch with each other in between the session times, to help each other with the actions that you're going to take. And quite often what we found is people, when they have buddied up, those relationships that they start on the program continue way beyond the length of the program as well, because they really connect and start to understand each other and set up a really good sort of almost thinking partnership, supportive relationship that helps you with that. And what your buddy can help you with is not only reflecting and exploring your thoughts and ideas, but also holding each other accountable for any actions you're going to take. And it's through taking actions outside of the sessions, actually, once you're back in the workplace, trying things out, experimenting, taking actions, that is the way you're really going to learn and support yourself to change and shift your behavior, so that you really start to feel more confident in stepping up as a leader. So those are the things that we explore during this workshop. I'm now going to hand back to Sarah, who is going to conclude for us.
Thank you, Mary. So we've come to the end of the session for today, and we hope that's given you some food for thought. So when you complete the little evaluation that's going to pop up on your screen any minute, I'm going to tell you what's coming up next. So just to remind you that the next session we have is leading with presence and impact, with impact and brand. And this is all about looking at authenticity, personal brand, and promoting ourselves positively. My colleagues Colette and Madeline will be running the next session for you. And if you would like some homework to prepare for the next session, it would be a nice idea to pick a few people who know you really well and ask them for 5 words that describe you. And that will help and be very useful in the impact and brand session, and will all make sense when you come to the session. Keep up your buddy conversations to review your actions and your thinking. And we really hope that this has given you a flavour for how we run our Women in Leadership programmes. Mary and myself are going to hang on for the next 5 minutes or so. So if you do have any questions, please do put them in the chat. You can also contact us at that email address, ewill@lhh.com. So finally, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope that you found it useful for your own personal development and gave you some insights and new thinking. And we look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thank you.